Alan Patricof, a venture capital legend and pioneer, chairperson and co-founder of Primetime Partners, and author of the new book, No Red Lights, Reflections on Life, 50 Years in Venture Capital and Never Driving Alone. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, it's great to see you again. And I got to say, your book, it just blew me away. And it is a must read. It is full of lessons and perspective, just the way you approach life, business, investing, art, politics, and volunteering. You certainly have a lot of zest for life. And you are 87 years old. And in the book, you wrote that you are determined to live to be 114 years old. Talk to me about that goal. Why 114?
I heard a lecture about, and I can't date it, but 10 or 15 years ago at Mount Sinai. And the gerontologist who spoke said that all of us could live at that time to 114. And the only reason we didn't is because we had, in the interim, cancer, tuberculosis, hip replacement, pneumonia, and each one of those things chipped off from 114. And of course, getting hit by a car or better still, a delivery bike has some impact. And of course, your genes have some impact. But basically, what he was getting at is the reason we live to 114 is we have medical problems on the way, and that chips off enough to get you down to wherever you end up. So I have had several of those difficulties during my life, and don't need to enumerate, but I still like the idea of 114. So I said, the hell with it, I'm going to go for 114. And so that's how I picked that. And I've actually stuck with it. And very often people will say, like you have, and introduce me and say 118. I say, no, I said 114. So that's where I'm at. And we'll see. And if, as I say in my book, if I don't make it, come to my funeral and laugh if you're still alive.
I like that. And maybe I'll set a goal that's similar to that, because it is certainly inspirational. And I imagine when you have a goal like that too, and especially you recently started your third business too, but it must also just impact your psyche, the way you approach life. Talk to me about the importance of having those sorts of goals.
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right. Having that kind of thought process makes you, or I don't know which comes first, but I live a very positive life, a very optimistic life. I wake up every day enthusiastic, and I'm always open to new opportunities, new ideas, which partly is why I'm in the venture capital business, because that's part of the nature of the venture capital business. But I also just built in have that kind of curiosity. And as you know, I'm headed for Burning Man very shortly, and intend to jog the marathon sometime in November if I can make it. And if in the meantime, maybe I'll come up with some other ideas. But I'm always open to new opportunities.
Yeah, I just didn't realize that until I read the book, just how many different things you're involved in. And you definitely live a really dynamic and interesting life. And you mentioned going to Burning Man. I've never been, but obviously I know people who've gone. And what was it that made you want to go to Burning Man?
Well, it's there. You know, why do people climb Mount Kilimanjaro? I mean, it's there. You know, there are certain things in life, and you say, I'd like to try it. And I think people who are adventuresome and, they try surfing. Someone tried to get me to do trapezing recently, but I resisted that. But other than that, I'm open to new ideas every day. And as I say, it ties into being in the venture capital business, which is backing new ideas.
I like that. I got two lessons from you just out of that was, having this optimism and also backing new ideas, just pulling out some insights for the folks listening. And the marathon too. Tell me about the training. I know you've run the marathon 5 times. I think the last one you did was 1983, according to the book. How's the training going?
Well, I have I call him a track coach. He calls himself a running coach. And I meet with him 3 days a week and in Central Park. And we're in the middle of training. on the weekends, I tend to cheat and do much longer runs, which he's not in favor of it yet. That comes, I guess, later in September. But I'm putting in the time, and the challenge will be not so much speed, but staying on one's feet, because it will take me, I don't know, he says 6+ hours. I say it will be between 7 and 8 hours. And standing on your feet, no matter what you're doing, is tiring for 7 or 8 hours.
Well, I think it's certainly impressive. I run the marathon. It's such an amazing New York event, and I will certainly be cheering for you. I want to talk about your latest venture in the last 2 years, starting your third business, Primetime Partners. What made you want to start a new fund or a new business here?
Well, I'd started Alan Patricof Associates in 1970, which became Apax, which is Alan Patricof Associates International. And in early 2000s, I one day realized that we had really gotten so much bigger that it was becoming somewhat bureaucratic in the fact that we had to have it to run the kind of size business we had. And I wasn't enjoying it as much. Plus, because our size of investments had increased, we were doing more private equity than we're doing venture capital. And my love was really with early stage companies. So I decided to turn it over to the other partners. And I didn't really know what I was going to do. And it turned out I spent several years pro bono working for the World Bank and the IFC and a couple of nonprofits in traveling around the world and trying to develop and encourage entrepreneurism and small business enterprises from Chengdu in China to La Paz, Bolivia, and most importantly in Africa, where I spent most of the time. And around 2006, I said, there's a real opportunity to go back in the venture business again with a different set of rules, because you do learn something from having done it as long as I had. And so I started a new firm called Greycroft, which is named after my house in East Hampton, Long Island, which was built in 1894. So it's a name that I didn't think would be too widely used. And we started out with a particular objective of investing in the internet and media companies, and in a venture capital mode. And by 2016, 18, I'd say, Greycroft had also gotten very big, and we were also becoming developing more administrative processes, and we were investing larger size investments, even though I had hoped we could contain ourselves to pure venture. And I said, I think I really want to do something else with my life. I don't know what it is. And I focused at that time in reading a lot about older people, and I was seeing a lot of my friends retiring at much too early an age. Since I had started Greycroft at 72, the fact that there's forced retirement in a lot of companies at 60 and certainly at 70. And I said, that's the prime of one's life. If you believe my 114, at 60, it's not even just about half your life has been lived. And by the way, the 114, I think if that same lecture were given today, it would probably be 120. But I haven't heard the lecture. So I decided I would start something new, and got intrigued with this area of the fastest growing part of the population being people over the age of 60. And they need everything, and they're more computer literate than they were 10 years ago. They have lots of money, and it's the fastest growing part of the population. By 2030, there'll be more people over 60 than there will be under 18. You hear every day now about people who are centenarians, I guess. And I think we're only going to, you could have 5, 6, 7 million 100-year-old people in the matter of the next 5, 10 years. So it's a growing market with a lot of money, a lot of experience. And I wanted to get involved in a fund that might service these people. And so we formed a company called Primetime Partners, which has total objective of serving the what I call the ageless generation with products, services, experiences, technologies. And so far, in under 2 years, we've made 25 investments, and it looks very exciting. Although, when you're in the early stage startup incubation stage, you really don't know how they're going to work out for a few years, and we're still in the early stages.
That's incredible. And I love the name Primetime Partners, by the way. And you mentioned the ageless generation, that it's also the fastest growing, which is so interesting to me because sometimes it feels like with investing, is all of these other things are focused on like a younger population, but you've really found an incredible area of focus here. And you mentioned too, just if you had to do if they had to do that lecture again, that maybe that age should be 120. What do you think it is? What are the advancements, or what are you seeing out there that's making it possible for folks to live longer?
Well, I think that, we're eating better. People are exercising more. I mean, my father smoked, 2 packs a day, had no restrictions on his diet. He was overweight. And I don't think I ever saw him do a day of exercise. Maybe I saw him swim in the ocean, but that's about it. And I think that today's ageless generation is, going up doing Pilates and doing every kind of workout with personal trainers and exercise group and hiking more. And I think we've read enough to know that what are the things we can do to prevent illness coming. And I think there have been obviously a lot of developments in the pharmaceutical area that have resulted in drugs that have increased longevity. One of the investments we've made in Primetime is a chain of longevity clinics known as Cenogenics, and it's been around for a while, and it's really growing very fast because people want to find out what they can do to extend their life cycle and to slow down disease or aging process. And I think people are much more conscious today of that problem. So I think we picked a very good area, and so far it seems to be resonating.
Yeah, certainly. That's neat. You mentioned the investment focus on longevity. And also, I mean, if I go back to the top of this conversation, you mentioned like your own training for the marathon. And it sounds like, not only are you optimistic about life, you just really invest in your health too, which is incredibly important. And you also wrote about your trainer quite a bit. What do you do? What can you share with the folks? Any other things that you do personally for your own health before we move on more into the investing side of things?
Well, I'm not, I'm not a vegan or a vegetarian. I eat in moderation. I have a crazy habit that I started a few years ago. Is I weigh myself twice a day, in the morning and at night. And if I vary by more than 2 pounds, I try to cut out a meal the next day. And I do a lot of exercise. I mean, obviously, if I'm going out 3 to 5 days a week, doing long walks at heavy paces. If I have a trainer at home, I'm keeping myself in reasonably good shape. My doctor tells me, my blood pressure is 120/70, which is pretty remarkable. So, if I can keep that up, I'm optimistic. I'm going to be around for a while.
I love it.
Listen, if I'm right, I've got 27 years left.
That's amazing. And I'm optimistic too, just based on everything you've been sharing. And so you're talking about some of the investments, the areas of focus for you all. And there's one stat that I was really surprised by, but in a really good way. And that's that 18% of your founders are over 50 years old. I would love to explore this with you, Alan. And You've started 3 businesses now. You started your first, I think you're age 36, your second at age 72, and this one at age 85, I believe. Talk to me about, founders who are a little bit older or later in life starting and why that's important and why it's also important for investors to back them.
Well, there have been studies done now, not mine, independent studies. I think it was Harvard was one of them, where they've determined that entrepreneurs in their 50s are more successful than those in their 20s or 30s, and or let's put it over 40. They're more successful, and I think it's they've been around longer, and they have more experience. They have bigger Rolodexes, and they still have a lot of energy, and uh, you know, I'd say wisdom counts.
Let's explore that. Like when you say wisdom counts, would love to just, to flesh that out a bit more and, maybe juxtapose it a little bit, like what you've seen in your own career.
Well, I think that, we say in the venture business, pattern recognition is the key to success, which means that you've seen everything once before, so you can kind of spot problems, anticipate them. That's not a perfect science, but it does help somewhat. And I think that just time and grade, having a good Rolodex, all of those things lead to doing your whatever field you're in successfully.
And I like that you all are focused on unlocking this untapped potential in this generation of entrepreneurs, kind of encouraging that rebirth of the older entrepreneurs. And you mentioned too, just how big of a market this is, this ageless generation. Can you help quantify for us your views on how big the market is and how maybe it compares to other ones out there? Just give folks a sense of what we're talking about when we talk about this ageless generation.
Well, I can't put a dollar number to it, but there are the percentage of population. Are you going to catch me? I don't say off guard, but the number of people that will be in this age group is so large that I can tell you it's a big enough market, and everyone in the venture business wants to find a market that has is big enough to accommodate multiple players, and you're not foreclosed with opportunities. But I would say that keep in mind, older people have more money they've accumulated over their life, so they naturally have more money as opposed to a millennial who's just perhaps come out of college or have their first or second job. So it goes with the territory. And as I say, it's a fast-growing market, and the size is certainly big enough to satisfy plenty of players.
Yeah. Fast growing. They have more money and a lot of opportunities out there. You mentioned earlier the longevity clinics. And what are the other areas within this space that are exciting to you, or any of the businesses that you're starting to back that you're excited about?
Well, caregiving is a very important aspect now. That's one area. Doing anything that can prevent loneliness. That's one of the biggest negatives of people who get older is they become isolated. So things that will keep them busy, entertain them, educate them, or whatever. Uh, uh, Telemedicine, where you're dealing with millions of people in senior living facilities that need to be taken care of, and they can't have all resident physicians. Financial advisory, getting ready for their retirement in advance. Insurance and preparation. Coming up with new living concepts, new nutritional companies that are dealing with post-acute problems and trying to change diets, keeping people trained so that they don't fall, which is a big area. The list goes on. Retrofitting homes so that they're compatible to people who are older and need supports in their home. We have a catalog company called Carewell, which supplies all the supplies you have in a catalog form. We have another company called, as I say, Synergenics, which runs a chain of longevity clinics. So the list is pretty long of where the opportunities are. Very interesting fact is that most of the companies we backed have been started by people who have had something happen in their family, mostly their family, but a little bit friends too, but where a family member, whether it's a husband, wife, daughter, uncle, grandparent, has had some kind of problem. And they have seen the fact that they didn't have adequate treatment for that problem. And therefore, it's been a area that, they said this is a good opportunity to start a company. Mm-hmm. And so we've seen a lot of startups from younger people who recognize a need in older people for the product or service.
Yeah, no, that's really incredible too. Just, when the younger generation also recognizes it as well. Okay, I want to start digging in more into the book. And, one of the things, there's so many things I really liked, but the way you talk about New York too. And you're a lifelong New Yorker and you grew up there. What was that like? And talk to me just a bit about like your younger years and how you even first got interested in, business and investing.
Well, I think there are two different subjects. I mean, my early life was brought up in the kind of end of the Depression. I lived on the west side of New York in a modest family upbringing, and a lot of things that were there in those days don't exist today. We used to have a coal truck coming by and dropping coal into a chute. We had the milkman. Actually, he wasn't in a horse and carriage, but he was in a milk truck that would come by and deliver milk. We would play stickball in the street because you could get in the streets in those days. I remember going back to the 40s or 50s. You would park your car in the street. There was an alternate side, and if you parked and there was a snowstorm, and there were lots of snowstorms in those days, the snow would cover your car, and your car was there for the winter. Today, if we have a snowfall, it's usually gone in 24 hours.
Yeah, it's definitely like a total difference. But okay, so let's talk about how you got interested in finance. I know your dad was a stockbroker. You'd read the stock pages, but talk to me about just kind of your initial interest there.
Well, I was intrigued by the numbers, and of course, you're intrigued by things going up and down. So there's movement at all times, and the stock market in those days, the newspapers. We had a lot of newspapers that came out at the end of the day, and my father would come home with a newspaper and read the stock pages, and I, shared some of that with him. And so I had always been interested in the world of finance. When I came out of college, it was a natural thing to look in that area for an opportunity. But, I had gone to Ohio State, which was not exactly number one on anyone's list. And there were no headhunters out those days, recruiters. You really had to scratch around to find a job. And I did it with plain old shoe leather, walking from door to door, and got very lucky and got an opportunity from a company that turned out to be a very high quality firm. And from that, I built up from one firm to another, and here I am today.
Yeah. And you started your first venture capital firm at age 36. And I don't even know if I don't even know if there was even a venture capital industry at that point, or even terminology for that. Talk to me about like starting the first, your first firm.
Yeah. Well, what happened was that I had worked at one point for a very wealthy, not my own, very wealthy family office. And I came to realize that the families were very good about investing in the stock market, but they really didn't do very well or had very little interest in private investments, what we call venture capital now, but was then just called deals. But because of the kind of networking of some of the leading figures on Wall Street, they would share deals around with each other, and no one knew anything about what they were doing, but they would occasionally, from time to time, go into a deal. And it, as I used to say, it got put in the filing cabinet. No one paid attention. I got intrigued with the idea of these private companies because they were not subject to the day-to-day fluctuations in the stock market. Prices did not swing; they were totally stable. And so I started taking interest in the portfolios that we had at the firm I was at. And one of the first investments I made was in the New York Magazine, which we started, and then a medical company called Datascope Corporation, and a TV radio company called Lynn Broadcasting. And those were all while I was working for someone else. And that gave me a taste for private investments, which I found much more satisfying than just being part of the public stock market. And so I decided to start a firm which would service more other family offices who had the same kind of situation, because all these places focused on being in liquid companies, but they all had a little bit of private companies. And I decided I'd help them monitor and take care of the young investments they made. And so I set up a business to be their outside advisor for their private investments. And it worked out. From there, I started a fund, and then another fund, and another fund. And gradually I dropped the family clients that I had and just went into the fund management business.
Yeah. And I would imagine too, do you remember like the first deal you did when you went out on your own?
Absolutely. Was in the secondary lead smelting business. It was a company that today, if they came for financing for a venture firm, I think they wouldn't even get they wouldn't get a seat in the waiting room. There'd be zero interest. But in those days, we were scraping around to find deals. And it turned out that was probably one of my more successful, if not most successful, investments.
Wow.
It went from being a little scrapyard in New Jersey to being today one of the 2 or 3, if not the leading secondary lead and metal smelting company in the entire world, with billions of dollars in revenue. So, from little acorns grow.
That's amazing. Yeah, you're there early then. And you mentioned like scraping around for deals. All right, take me back to this time period. How did you go about sourcing deals? How did this work?
That deal came to me through an intermediary, an investment banker, which is highly unusual today, because most of the companies that get financed, they go out and do it on their own. But he brought it to me, and I followed up, and it worked out pretty well.
Yeah. So 50 years in venture, and obviously things are a lot different now. I'm sure people are like, they're probably constantly pitching deals, or how do you kind of think about the evolution or the comparison? Does it surprise you, like how much the industry has grown over the years? What do you make of it?
I would never have dreamed the market would be this big. I mean, it was a fraction of the size. It wasn't even an industry until 1973, but it was a organic kind of sharing deals among family groups, individuals, high net worth individuals, and it just grew into a more institutional type business, to the point where today, it's probably 90 90% institutions at least.
Some of your more memorable deals, I know I was reading you were involved in AOL. You're early in Apple. You've done a lot over the years. And a lot of it is as technology has evolved. Do you have any memorable ones that stand out to you over the years?
Oh, of course. I mean, that's a hard question to answer. I mean, each one had its own characteristics. I mean, I get most identified with Apple, which was really just a small investment we made in 1979, but it obviously gets a lot of attention since it was the second round of investment. So it was before it was public. And obviously, the appreciation has been dramatic. I was involved with AOL, which people don't realize was in bankruptcy when we invested it. It was a game company called Control Video, and we took it out of bankruptcy and with others, and became America Online. I guess the thing that I thought was most exciting was I was invested in the first cellular company, which when cellular came out in 1981 or 82, it was done through a lottery where the government, in effect, gave away spectrum. I mean, it's hard to believe when today's spectrum sells in the billions, but in the beginning, to encourage people to go into cellular and use that spectrum, there was a lottery held, and you bid on different cities, and we won Ohio, and then added Michigan and Texas, and then Puerto Rico, and went abroad. And it was a very exciting time when originally everyone thought that cellular penetration might end up being a couple of percent. Today, probably cellular penetration may be 100% for all I know.
That's cool. I've heard about this lottery, but I didn't know much about it. Like, how did you get involved in that? That's kind of cool.
And what?
And you said there was a cellular lottery that you had to bid on for spectrum?
There were two young guys one had been in the FTC and they were childhood friends from Ohio. And they came to us at Alan Patricof Associates and had this idea of participating in the lottery. And it seemed like a crazy idea because in those days, people thought that it would have 2% penetration. And I think today it's over 100%. So the market they expected was the established people who were running radio telephones at those days, AT&T and Motorola, never dreamed of how big this market could be. And certainly has been a big success and big opportunities for many companies.
Yeah. And your investments have spanned everything from, the beginning of like the personal computer, cell phones, internet, digital media, fintech, podcasting, really like this evolution of technology. You've been on top of it. I would love to kind of go into, what makes a good investment decision? Like, what are the fundamentals of a good investment decision for you?
Well, I wish I knew the answer to that because I'd be a lot richer than I am, and a lot of investors would also be. I mean, I think it's a highly speculative business if you're getting into it at the early stages. Now, if you go in later in a private equity world, there's a lot more established numbers to deal with. But when we go in, it's more hypothetical, theoretical. It's extrapolation of what you think, how markets will build, and how successful managements will be in attacking those markets, and what the economics will be, competition, who else is doing what they're doing, what the supply sources are, and it's a very complicated analysis, and it's really an art, not a science. And at the end of the day, you try to back people who you think can build businesses and attract a team around them that will help them implement a vision that they have. And hopefully the vision has been well thought out and they understand the economics of the business.
Mm-hmm. I like that you said it's an art, not a science. And you also mentioned, backing people, is there anything that you ever look for in a founder, or can you kind of, I don't know, like I've never been in your position, but I don't know if there's something that you can tell, like, that, I don't know if there is anything there, but when you meet someone, if you can kind of tell this person's kind of got what it takes, or.
Well, every once in a while, you do come across someone who has that kind of special sauce, but I don't think you can totally rely on that. I think having charisma is does help, because it gets you to realize that there are people who can attract other good people to a team, and team building is very much part of it. But a lot of factors go into the equation, and that's why not every company is successful, and not everybody is designed to be an entrepreneur. Remember, it's some people have to work for a living for others.
Hmm. I want to talk about that too, because I know you do speak at a lot of business schools and you do give advice for folks, including, aspiring entrepreneurs. And it might be a little different from what other people might say, but I'd love to hear from you, like your thought process around, the advice that you give to folks at business schools. I know you'll like ask them to raise their hands if they want to start a business, and you often will recommend that they work for someone else. Let's talk about that.
Well, I think we're living at a time. By the way, you're obviously showing you've read the book. Very often I talk at business schools, and when I ask for how many people are planning to start their own business, I don't know this year because I haven't done it yet this year, but there's a very high percentage, and the reason is that they knew somebody who probably started a business 2 or 3 years before and who made a lot of money, and so they say, well, why? I'm smarter than they are. Why shouldn't I be just as successful? And disappoints me a little bit, because that's not a really good reason to start a business. I'd much rather see passion and understanding of a particular area that drives you to say, I've got to start this, or I'll die. I mean, I really, I want to. I'm desperate to see this idea implemented. That's a good sign. Someone who's had some experience before, and a lot of people coming out of business school haven't had sufficient management experience, and so I have often said, going with another startup, not necessarily being the entrepreneur, but going there and getting a chance to work under someone who has done it before and learn from them, and also to see the mistakes they make. As my father taught me, always, try to benefit from someone else's on someone else's nickel. In other words, they take a higher risk, and then you benefit from it by learning and watching. And I think that even the people seem to shun the major companies. I mean, they didn't get to be major companies by because they were all stupid. I mean, there are a lot of great companies in this world, and if you happen to have an opportunity to work for one and learn skills and work under someone who can teach you, that prepares you to at some point be an entrepreneur. As I say, not everybody's designed to be an entrepreneur. So I think that we have, it'll get sorted out over time when we have those who are, manage to put it all together and understand the economics of what it takes to make a business.
I like that. I think there's so many great lessons here. And, learning from someone else's mistakes on someone else's dime, like taking that time to work for someone, learn from their mistakes, and, never hurts to learn on someone else's dime, as you put it in the book. And you mentioned like not everyone's cut out to be an entrepreneur. And it's interesting because like when you say like, the majority in a classroom would raise their hands that they want to start a business because, as you mentioned, they've seen someone else do it and be successful. Do you think there's almost like, let's kind of explore this a little bit further. Are there too many people who are just kind of going that route right now with like these like too idealistic of an, I guess they're a bit too idealistic, or they think, okay, this is a way to make a lot of money. What are you kind of seeing out there?
Well, I think that's part of it. I think that as a result of that, we have 25 food delivery companies and 35 dog walkers, and there's a lot of repetition and not as much unique technological developments going on today. Most of what you see are applications of existing technology.
That's a good point. How about valuations? You did write a bit about valuations, like when you were coming along in the business to now. What do you make of valuations these days?
Valuations today are high, uh, and they have been high for a while. And I think it's because there's a lot of money in funds who are out to put money to work, particularly a lot of bigger funds. And so as a result, they need to put more money to work. And as a result of that, companies get overcapitalized. And in order to absorb these bigger capital amounts, the valuations go up to absorb larger capital. And what you might have got for $1 million 5 years ago, you now get half of that in ownership.
How do you think this ultimately plays out? Do you think there'll be like a washout in this, or valuations will inevitably have to come down, or too much money sloshing around? What do you make of that?
I think we're going through a period of uh, uh, high valuations, uh, uh, and I think there's a little bit of irrationality, and the fact that the IPO market is so dismal. Uh, I think that trickles down to lower valuations in the private market. It just takes a while, and rationality will come back in, and there'll be more, better, more reasonable valuations. But at the moment, particularly in the later stage rounds, there's a lot of money available.
In the later stage rounds, you mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, how about like what you're seeing within the space you're operating in? Tell me about like what you're seeing there.
Well, for early stage, we're doing only early stage investments in an area that people really hadn't focused on, which is the market for, as I said before, products and services and et cetera for older people. Most venture funds are have different, fintech, uh, healthcare, uh, consumer, whatever it is. We are a totally diversified firm, and we have one thing that's consistent, and that's the customer. Everything we do, no matter what field it is, has to serve an older person, and that's an interesting, kind of unique phenomena. I mean, if you companies in venture firms that focused on AI can invest in AI companies that do everything. Uh, People that are in healthcare are providing healthcare for the masses. We have one defining element. We have one customer, but we are diversified in all the different areas that serve that customer. And as I say, we've made 25 investments. We haven't lost any yet, but I am certain we will. It's just inevitable. And it's too early to see the full results. It's going to take a couple more years before these early stage companies really have a chance to blossom and build substantial revenues.
Mhm. Something else I just really appreciate about the book is I think there are I mentioned this, a lot of lessons for folks. And there's one thing, and I know I'm kind of pivoting here, but you talk about integrity, and when you were at Greycroft, building a culture of integrity. And one of the parts that stood out to me was you wrote a letter to a founder. It was during like a fundraise, and you pointed to ethics. So hoping we can kind of revisit that and, kind of, you wrote about, regardless of your age and experience, you talk about values and ethics. I was hoping maybe we could talk about that. And if maybe you could even revisit that story there.
Well, let me discuss it in a different context. For the last, I'd say 15 years, I don't know exactly when it started, but it started a while ago. I would get every day, literally, someone coming up to me at a conference or on the street or the subway, wherever it was, and say the same thing. It always started the same way. You don't remember me, but. And when it first started, I was very nervous about that because I didn't know what they were going to follow it. But I have to say, at this point in my life, I honestly don't worry anymore. But I know it's going to happen. By the way, it hasn't happened yet today. So it's midday, so I have a chance that it will still happen. But it happened many times yesterday when I was at a conference. And it's always, you don't remember me, but you were the only person who returned my phone call. But I worked for you when I was, 21 coming out of college. You don't remember me, but you took the time to meet with me and see my project, even though you said no. You don't remember me, but I worked for you. You don't remember me, but you invested in my company. I mean, there are so many you don't remember me buts. And what I learned from that over time is that how you treat people and how you run your life really comes back at you. And if you think about what I've just said, all those sentences after but could have been a lot of different kinds of but. And I think that running your life with an ethical approach, with integrity, with respect for the people you're dealing with sun sensitivity. I mean, one of the big things in venture is you have to learn how to say no, since so much of what we do is turning down deals, not accepting them. Saying no with humility all goes to build a reputation, and it's all cumulative. I mean, I say in the book, people have commented to me, God, you raised that fund in 3 months. Normally a fund will take a year to two to raise. And I always say, yes, 3 months, but it was 50 years in 3 months. And that gets down to this building, a reputation and a lifestyle, and building a name in a field that you can be proud of. And I, at this point, I'm no longer concerned about the tail end of that conversations. And I've gotten some very, very, very nice follow-ons to that. I have a policy of every phone call I get gets returned in 24 hours. I try to write a lot of personal notes in handwriting. All those things are how you build a reputation and how you treat other people. And it comes back to either, make you feel good or haunt you at some point.
It's a really good point, and a lot of great lessons within that. Another thing that I loved, and you mentioned you're at a conference yesterday, you have this amazing strategy when you go to a conference and you don't sit with people from your firm. Can you tell folks about what you do when you go to conferences or any events?
Well, the purpose of going is not to circle around, which is absolutely 100% the tendency. I've seen it so many times. The most comfortable is to sit at a table for lunch with the three other people if they're there from your office or people beforehand. And I always try to break those crowds up if they're people who work for the firm. But my own life, I feel it's an opportunity to meet new people and introduce yourself and find out about other people. And my stage in life, unfortunately, it ends up with too many business cards and email contacts that I don't have enough time to follow up in 24 hours. But it nevertheless makes you available. And I think people appreciate that. And I think that, people younger people particularly get lost at their desk and are so intense in what they're doing, they don't get out there. That's why my subtitle is, 50 years in venture capital and never driving alone means, everything you do is cumulative. Everything you do is related to the people you do it with. You can't do it by yourself.
Yeah, certainly. And I just love that. And I think it'll be such a treat if someone was going to a conference, they didn't know you and they got to meet you. And just the fact that you're so open and it's taken you some really interesting places. And I mean, you've done cool things in volunteering, art, theater, which is really cool. I didn't know that you were a backer of Hamilton, politics, business investing, you name it. And I see that you're sitting in an office right now. I take it you're probably in New York. And gosh, just the importance of, people getting out and being around other people. What do you make of kind of the post-pandemic world, return to work? Are you worried? Are you seeing people go back to the, city business centers? Talk to me about your feelings.
I think it's very sad that people are not back at their desks. I think they're missing an awful lot of interaction and camaraderie and mentorship that you only get by being present. And it's unfortunate that too many firms have been dictated by their employees who, have gotten used to having a more casual lifestyle, which I'm not against, but they don't know what they're missing, particularly younger people. I think it's probably less important for certainly my age, but people coming out of college or business schools or, in their early careers to not have that chance to mix with even people their own age is a real shortcoming. And it will show up at some point down the line where they just won't have those Rolodexes or relationships.
Yeah, the relationships and just, the people that you meet in your life. And we only have a few minutes left. And I do want to bring this up because you wrote so beautifully in the book, and that was about your wife, your late wife. And, Warren Buffett often says that, the most important decision you make in your life is who you choose to be your life partner. And I would just love to hear from you about like the impact your wife had on you and you as a person and all facets of your life.
Well, I was married twice. The first time was not as successful, shorter. It was only 7 years. And my second wife, who passed away a year and a half ago from Alzheimer's, I was married to for 50 years. We had three children, actually 2 children. One was my previous marriage. But as far as I'm concerned, and she was concerned, we had 3 sons. And we worked very hard together on building a family life. And did a lot of things together, supported each other. And I would say we had a very good marriage. And I think what we were most proud of, I'm sure she'd be proud of it today if she were alive, is that our 3 sons, one's married 30 years, one's married 25, and one's married 20 approximately. And that's kind of unique in the world I'm in, where you have 3 children, all of whom are still in their first marriage. So I guess we must have built a good family image and tried to build a home life and convey style of living and ethics. And I think we deliberately did not go out of our way to spoil our children. I think you can't avoid it today to some degree, but they at least understand values today, I hope.
Yeah, and none of them are in venture as well. They all have like really creative fields, which is really cool to see as well.
Well, that was one of my decisions also. I'll never know whether that was the right or wrong one, but I decided early on when they were eligible to go to work that I did not want them to work and for me where someone would always had the chance to make a comment, and I'm sure you've heard that so-and-so wouldn't have their job if it weren't for their father, or they're trading on their father's name. My sons are not trading on my name, and they never even interned for an hour in any of my firms. So I wanted them the ability to say, I did it on my own. Now, they will say to you that having the last name of Patricof has helped, but that goes. I mean, that's okay, but they could say they did it on their own, and all that goes with it. Because I did it on my own, so it's nice to have them say it.
Well, any parting thoughts before I let you go?
No, except that I wrote this book for two reasons. One was to uh, encourage older people not to pack it all in and go to the golf course and retire, and that there was, if I write about life expectancy, they have a lot to live for, and they should think about going into a new business or going back into the same business or doing something exciting with their lives. And I also wrote it for younger people so it was kind of two markets, was to say, live an interesting life, be open to the opportunities that come in front of you, look for opportunities, and don't let them pass you by and say, I'll get to it tomorrow, or be too lazy. I've lived a life of curiosity, of openness, to try things, and I would encourage strongly younger people who kind of get lost in their work and so absorbed that they never taste the fruits of life. And so I hope I've accomplished that, and I've had enough response for the book that I know that message has gotten across for both markets.
I can say that as a millennial, I can say there's certain things that I will take away and apply to my own life. And I just love leaving folks with that lesson of being open and being curious. And, Alan Patricof, this has been such an amazing conversation. I've learned a lot from you. I encourage everyone to go pick up the book, No Red Lights, Reflections on Life, 50 Years in Venture Capital, and Never Driving Alone. And by the way, Alan, hope you have a great run at the New York City Marathon, an amazing time at Burning Man. Can't wait to hear all about it.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.